Hello, Willow House. Thank you for being here on this webinar. We're going to be talking about sleep today. Why? Well, good question. Pretty much every animal on the planet does it, and humans spend about a third of our life in sleep, or at least attempting to fall asleep. So it's kind of a little bit important there. Not getting enough sleep will certainly undermine your best intentions of training, all of your best efforts with nutrition. When we see sleep being sacrificed, all those other things kind of stop working so well, which is bad news, but it's also good news because if we're hitting plateaus, sleep can be one of those cool free things that we can hit to really um, optimize or kind of work synergistically with nutrition and exercise if you're trying to hit some health goals. So, like I said, big part of our life, a third of our life is spent in sleep. And we're going to be talking today about the stages of sleep, why it's important, and just a couple simple like tips and tricks that you can do to just optimize your sleep. So, what is sleep? It basically we can break it down into three or four different stages. So there's kind of this light sleep, this light stage that's where we're starting to kind of tune down for the evening. We're starting to get drowsy, we're starting to feel that heaviness hit us, and our brain starts to slow down a little bit in its cognition. And we see when we're measuring this with EEG or other brainwave activities, we see the brain waves kind of go into this alpha brainwave, and that's when drowsiness kicks in for us. Um, and then the later stage of light sleep is when our body temperature starts to decrease and get a little cooler. Not only that, but we see the heart rate start to drop. We're going to come back to that core temperature. It's kind of one of those things that we can utilize if we're having trouble sleeping. But we're going to kind of talk about the other stages first. So deep sleep is the next phase. And that's when we really start to see the drowsiness overtake us. We actually see cognitive impairment happening and kind of this fogginess. So if you're woken up during that deep sleep phase, you're kind of like, where am I? What's going on? You're kind of out of it, and we start to see the brain waves go into a deeper, slower phase called delta. So while the brain is kind of going through these changes, what's happening in our body? Because that's also equally important. Well, deep sleep, this phase, is when our body actually has a chance to start repairing all of our muscles, our tissues, our connective tissue, our tendons, all those things that we've either say we're recovering from an injury or we're coming off of a workout. Well, again, those benefits from the workout don't come during the workout itself. Remember, it comes from our ability to recover from the workout. And sleep is the number one recovery tool for all this. You could joke that it's the best performance enhancing drug out there. So get enough of it. It's free and it's legal. So get as much as you can. So our body is going through this transformation of repairing and regenerating tissue. At the same time, this is the window that our immune system has to start boosting itself. So immune system function is a huge topic ever since COVID hit. Everybody's an immunologist and an expert now. So sleep is one of these things, though, that's not being talked about. And it's when our natural killer cells, or NKCs, have the opportunity to patrol. So they're going around the body and they're knocking out precancerous cells and identifying and tagging things that shouldn't be where they are so that our immune system can do its job. Not only that, on top of those natural killer cells patrolling, we have a glymphatic system or a neurolymphatic system. So there's the lymphatic system, which is all of our drainage. And if you want to think about it in a kind of a gross way, it's like the sewage system. It's our body's way of kind of getting all of that stuff out. The glymphatic system is our brain's way of cleaning up and taking the trash out. So you can imagine maybe the trash system, the garbage trucks. If there was like a deep freeze, hopefully we don't have one of those soon, but if we have a deep freeze and those trucks are not able to get to the roads and this happens for weeks, you can imagine all the trash piling up in front of people's houses. So that's an example of when we're not getting enough sleep, our glymphatic tissue, our glymphatic system it's not able to take out the trash on a regular basis. But when we start hitting deep sleep cycles, we give our brain that opportunity, and our immune system of our brain, that opportunity to start cleaning up all of these little metabolic byproducts that start to accumulate in there just from natural metabolic processes of brain cells. So one of the things that we see in Alzheimer's is an accumulation and a piling up of these different proteins, tau entanglements, and all these kind of weird terms I won't bore you with. But if we are getting enough sleep and good quality sleep, our brain is able to, in a way, autophagize or autophagy is the process by which our body breaks those things down so they don't accumulate into a more diseased type of state. So that's kind of deep sleep. So we've hit kind of light sleep, we're getting into that deep sleep, and now what most people have heard about is REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement, and they first observed this in little babies and infants in the 1950s, where they were watching these little ones sleep, because that's pretty much all newborns do all the time, and they see their eyes under their eyelids kind of darting back and forth and all these random movements. And at first it kind of freaked them out, like, what's going on? What's wrong with these babies? We all do this. So we all go through REM sleep, but we have to hit those light sleep, deep sleep, and to finally get to the REM cycle of our sleep. And so when you put all those together, you get a cycle of sleep: light, deep, and REM. And so we go through these cycles throughout the night. And why REM is so important, it's involved in memory and cognition. So this is where most of our dreaming happens as well. So when you're having very vivid dreaming, it's typically done in REM sleep. But the good news is our bodies are not acting out this crazy dream, and we're not flailing all around or going crazy, because during REM, our muscles are inhibited by our brain stems. This is an example. If you've been in our office, we talk about the nervous system. One of its jobs in the autonomic nervous system is heart rate, respiratory rate, all those things. Well, one of it is to shut down muscle function during REM sleep. And that's really important. So we're not flailing all over the place. We can kind of visualize and have this dream happening while we're still staying in bed. So that's a good thing. Also, it's important for brain development. So this is why babies are sleeping so much. They have to go through these cycles to really hit that REM sleep, and they're processing everything that their brains are taking in, and it's very important for their brain development at that point in their life, and also in ours, because also REM is involved in emotional processing. So somebody who's sleep deprived can be a little bit more susceptible to things like anxiety and depression. And these things have huge hormonal cascades to them. So for example, depression, one of the earliest signs clinically we can see is sleep disturbance. When somebody has difficulty falling asleep, or maybe they have a flip-flop sleep cycle, they're awake at night all night, and then they're sleeping really, really late in the day. That's one of the clinical signs for people who are kind of going through depression. It doesn't mean that everybody who has a flip-flop sleep cycle is depressed, but a lot of people who are depressed have altered sleep cycles and functions. So these sleep cycles we go through as we start in light, deep, REM, and then we come back to almost awake, light, deep, REM, and then et cetera, et cetera. Those are called sleep cycles. Those typically happen in about a 90 to 120 minute time frame. So you're looking at an hour and a half to 2 hours that it requires us to complete one cycle. Now, it's really important that you hear the old wisdom about getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep, which is great. We want to try to shoot for that. It's not always realistic, and it doesn't always happen that way. However, what's equally important and maybe doesn't get talked about as much is how many of these cycles are we completing throughout our night. So we want to maybe reframe that 7 to 9 hours, just kind of a blanket statement, into how many of these 90 to 120 minute sleep cycles can we achieve throughout night. Why is that important? Well, every sleep cycle that we complete, we spend more time in that REM cycle, or that REM stage down there. So in your first 90 to 120 minutes, when you hit REM, you kind of come out of it pretty quickly. But the next cycle, and the next 90 to 120 minutes, you spend a little bit longer, and you get to have more memory consolidation and all of these other benefits of that REM sleep, where your cognitive processing is very, very active in that moment. REM sleep is amazing because it shows during these studies and research, it shows that the brain is almost as active as if it were awake. So we still don't know very much about sleep in general, but that's pretty fascinating to think about it that way. So so that's kind of what sleep is and why it's important. What are some of the things that we can do to really optimize our sleep? So let's start with those sleep cycles, okay? And so the sleep cycles, what you might want to try experimenting with, because each person is so different, is how can you time it where you're kind of coming out of a complete sleep cycle. So instead of just saying like, I'm going to go for 8 hours, I'm going to set my alarm 8 hours from now, while you're in bed, you're on your phone or your alarm, you set that alarm for 8 hours. Say it's 10 o'clock to 6 a.m. Okay. But that doesn't really align with these 90-minute and 120 sleep cycles. So what REM also does, if we can kind of time it, REM helps us to prepare for wakefulness. We don't really want to find ourselves being woken up in that light sleep or that deep sleep, because again, that deep sleep is very cognitively jarring. It's kind of fogginess, or kind of out of it when we wake up. So we want to focus on, say, for example, let's see, I wrote a couple examples down here. If you say you go to bed at 11 and you'd kind of want to aim for a 6:30 a.m. wake up, because you're completing those 90-minute cycles, you're completing about 5 of those. And as you're coming out of that REM sleep, that's when it's ramping you up for wakefulness instead of getting caught in that deep sleep. Or 8 a.m. If you're going to bed again at 11 p.m., you want to aim for an 8 a.m. wake up if you have the flexibility for that. So it's either kind of like a 6:30-ish or an 8 o'clock-ish type of time frame. That will help you achieve full and complete cycles. Hopefully that makes sense. Say you're in a night shift. Okay, so not all of us are working during the day and going to sleep at night. If you're coming off of a night shift, you want to try to aim for, say, like 7 a.m. Or a 9 a.m. Say you're getting home, you have enough time to kind of unwind, get some food or whatever. So 9 a.m., if you're falling asleep at 9 a.m., you'll have complete cycles when you wake up at about 4:30 p.m. or 6 p.m., depending on what your schedule is like. You can aim for one of those. Hopefully that works for you. So that's kind of timing when it comes to little tips and tricks for your sleep patterns. Another thing, there's a lot of other things too. I mean, we could get into blood sugar disorders that kind of affect our sleep if you notice yourself waking up in the middle of the day, or in the middle of the night rather, at the same time each night. You can kind of start to experiment with having a higher protein or a moderate kind of healthy fat meal at night to kind of stabilize your blood sugars instead of high carbohydrate or high sugar right before bed, because your blood sugar is going to come up and it's going to crash. And if it crashes, two things might wake you up: cortisol, because cortisol helps bring our blood sugar back up, or worse, adrenaline. And that's when you wake up in the middle of the night with like beating hearts, or if you're kind of in a sweat and you're really ramped up. That's a sign that adrenaline is requiring you to wake up for whatever reason or another. But the other things that are kind of maybe free or low cost to helping your sleep include things like keeping your bedroom as cool in that 60-degree, maybe 68-degree Fahrenheit atmosphere. That signals your body. We talked earlier about core temperature, how in that later light sleep, it starts to drop our heart rate and our core temperature, right? Core temperature is what helps signal the body to fall asleep. That's because our ancestors and predecessors for thousands of generations have typically been up and about during the day. So they're either outside in the sun and their body temperature is up, or they're working around, they're moving their body and their temperature is up. And then at night, after the sun goes down, they didn't have all this artificial lighting and everything to stimulate them. As the sun goes down, that their core temperature also dropped with the rest of the ambient temperature. And that signaled people to start sleeping, to stay in rhythm with the natural cycles. So that's another kind of topic to kind of hit and make sure that you can kind of aim for something like a chili pad, which is a product that you can lay on and it circulates air or cool water underneath you. There are other kind of cooling mats and cooling things out there. Fans can help. Circulating air is really good, actually, but sometimes that can dry you out a little bit in your respiratory capacity. So, just some things to think about there. What you could do potentially is about an hour or an hour and a half before going to bed, you can take a pretty warm shower, and what that does is it'll dilate your blood vessels, and it actually has this effect where it cools your body temperature. Your body temperature will drop because you are vasodilating. You're letting heat off as you're in that hot shower. Your body's trying to cool itself. And in that process, you can drop your core temperature a little bit. One of my favorites, like on a weekend, if I have extra time, is even up to a few hours before bed or in the evening, if my friends and I, or my wife and I, do cold plunges. So we will get into like a cold pool or fill up an ice bath. And that can really drop your core temperature very, very quickly, doing a few cycles of that. And that really signals your body for the rest of the evening to kind of get ready for nighty night. So those are a couple other things that you can do. There are many, many supplements out there. Doc Parsley has a great sleep remedy. It's a combination of several different things. There are things like melatonin. This has kind of mixed effects on people. Some people do really well with it, some don't. So you kind of have to experiment. Another kind of quick thing about an hour or so before you go to bed, if you are working on the computer, watching TV, get some blue blocker glasses. You can pick these up. There are companies like Blue Blocks. You'll see how they have a kind of an orange tinge to them. It blocks a lot of the blue lights, which basically blue light mimics daylight. And so it's signaling, it goes into your eyes, into your brain, and your occipital lobe says it's still daylight out because we're getting all this blue light and it's stimulating. It blocks your natural melatonin production. We don't want that. We want to facilitate that as much as possible. Tart cherry juice has been shown to help when it comes to natural melatonin secretion. So just mimicking a lot of these things as the sun goes down, we want to get more of those warmer colors and warmer tones. The iPhones and I'm sure Androids have those natural color fluctuations. F.Lux or Flux is a program that you can install on any computer to help you naturally make that shift when the sun goes down. So that's also pretty cool. So those are just some kind of quick tips. This was kind of like one of the more basic talks on sleep. There's many more points that we could go over, which maybe we'll save for the next time we do this. But I hope this was helpful. I hope it was useful. We'd love your feedback, and yeah, I hope you all get some really quality sleep tonight and for the future. Thanks, y'all. We'll see you around the office. Bye.